Hello. Hi, Ian.
Hi,
Welcome.
Luke.
I'm Lisa Oram. I'm the marketing director at Snow Farm. And I'm here today with Ian Brownlee, who is teaching at Snow Farm for the first time in June. His class is going to be narrative drawing. And we're just here today to kind of introduce you to our community, Ian, and find out a little bit more about how you approach your teaching so that our folks can get to know you a little bit. So
Great.
Ian is in Asheville, North Carolina,
Mhm.
and thanks so much for taking the time today.
Hey, glad to be here.
Great. I was just thinking about your class narrative drawing, and I wondered if you could just talk a little bit about, narrative in general and, how it plays a role in your art or in art in general, why you think it's important.
Yeah, sure. I was drawn to narrative shortly after I got out of art school. It wasn't something that was addressed when I was in school. I think it probably is now. But I moved to Scotland and I saw a lot of Renaissance artwork there. And I spent a lot of time just looking at these paintings that would have, 20 figures, and everyone seemed to have their own thing going on. And I was just really blown away by all the different stories that I could make up looking at these paintings. Like, I didn't know what they were actually about. I think the stories I made up were not the same ones that the artists had in mind, but I didn't mind. To me, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. We never really know if the stories that we see are what the artist intended and
Yeah.
whether or not that even really matters.
Yeah, to me, it's what the viewer brings to it that matters way more than what the artist had in mind. Yeah.
Cool. So how do you work with students to, develop their own narrative, voice, and direction in their drawing or painting?
Yeah, well, the main thing I do is encourage them to play, encourage them to have fun, follow their own voice. We have all these voices in our heads, people telling us what we should do. But the best way into narrative is just to play and have fun.
Cool.
Um, so I start them out with a lot of drawing. For the first day or so, we're mostly working on different drawing techniques, different materials, different types of paper. And I'm just giving them a lot of practice drawing the figure and drawing other things. And then the best exercise I know of is a collage one, which I'll demo here, where I have students cut out images from their own drawings that they like and
Nice.
collage them. And sometimes they'll share things, sometimes once something that was one student drew it ends up in another student's collage.
Oh,
So
interesting.
yeah, yeah,
They kind of trade back and forth.
they do. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So what have you got going on there behind you?
Okay, so this is a collage exercise that my students really love. We start with a couple days of drawing, and then I have students cut out figures from their drawings. And these are figures that I've drawn. You can see they're on different colors of paper, different colors of ink. I've got some people, got some animals, backgrounds, um, mythological things, just whatever interests you, go ahead and cut it out and put it in the drawing.
Yep.
And then the idea is to start to play with them. You may have a story in mind to start out with, so let's start with a story. I'm going to go for a pretty universal story, which is two people talking to each other. So we have a relationship between these two people. Seems like they're a couple, they're friends.
Definitely.
But then what happens if I add a third?
Hmm.
He's a little further away and in the background. Looks like
Mm-hmm.
he's thinking about these two. Maybe he wants to be part of the group. We start to wonder about these things when we see these people together and read their body language. So then if these two are back to back instead of facing each other,
Ah.
now we wonder if they're at odds with each other. So then I can add some other figures, bring in a dog, maybe a bird, maybe they play into it, maybe they don't. So, you start to play with them, move things around. Let's bring him back. and go in more of a mythological direction. Now he has a leopard head. So this could be symbolic, could be mythological. So let's go with it. Let's have her crowned. We have a cherub here who's coming down to crown her. So now she's a queen and he's a leopard.
That's a totally different story.
Yeah, and now we have a princess in a boat.
Aha.
Oh, so maybe he's here. Maybe he's contemplating the princess now.
Ah.
This bird comes back into it. And you can just keep going with this, all day when we have a dog on the boat.
Uh-huh.
And this is how students find their voice,
Mm.
by playing with different combinations and seeing what resonates for them.
Sometimes people might come to a piece of art with a narrative in mind, a story that they want to tell.
Yeah.
But it sounds like in this exercise that you just did, also a story might reveal itself or
Exactly.
be discovered as opposed to being represented from something that the artist or the student starts with.
Yeah, it's always surprising. People usually end up with something really different from what they expected at the beginning. And that's a big part of the discovery.
That sounds very freeing. And I think freeing, feeling free is usually a good condition for creating.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, that looks like a really fun and useful exercise that you would do in your class.
Yeah, it really is. And I'd like to show you one of my finished pieces so you can see where this process can end up for me.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah. So this is one of my paintings called Wolves at the Table.
Okay.
And so you see you have this couple in the middle.
Yeah.
And at first I had them facing each other. But I didn't want this painting to be about a romance between two people. The point of this to me is they're kind of oblivious to the wildlife in the area. So having them facing each other also makes them seem disconnected from each other, which I wanted for this piece. No one's making eye contact. Everyone's kind of in their own world.
Yeah.
And then there's a wolf on the table that's howling.
Right.
And the reason I called it Wolves at the Table is there's a common saying, wolves at the door, meaning there's danger coming.
Yeah.
And this is saying, I think we should make decisions about wildlife management with wolves at the table. So it's a visual representation of that.
Oh, that's so interesting. And what you started out saying is that the viewer will bring their own stories too, because when I saw Wolves at the Table and heard that title, I felt like there was a story of danger in that family, especially with the way the two adults are facing away from each other. And there might be unhappiness or dysfunction in that family that's not quite being acknowledged. But hey, the wolves are really at the table and nobody even is paying attention.
Yeah, and your story is as valid as mine.
Yeah. That's great. So that's really fun. I would love to be in a class talking about those kind of things for 5 days, like you'll be doing this June at Snow Farm. Do you have any idea about like who an ideal student is? Or I know your class is open to all levels. Is there some type of, person's interest or abilities that you think would make them an ideal student for you for this class?
I would say that narrative is pretty universal and pretty easy for people to grasp. So I think it's appropriate for anyone. I think it's especially appropriate for someone who is interested in storytelling, who feels they have a story they want to tell.
Great.
Someone who likes to draw. You don't have to be good at drawing. One of the things I encourage people to do is find their own style and their own voice. So whether that's hyperrealism or abstraction or animation, it all works.
Great. Ian, thanks so much for chatting with me today, and we'll see you in June.
Thank you, Lisa.